Hello, good evening and welcome to World Today, the show where we get you all the latest that is going on around the world on this date as well. I'm Gautam Roy and on this show we'll get you what is happening in terms of the firestorm that has broken out ever since Russia hit back at Ukraine in multiple cities including Kyiv. Even civilians have been killed with missiles because of the attack on the Kerch bridge that had disabled it partially. And of course we'll also talk about how the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Shankar has done some plain speak on world affairs in Canberra. But first, as always, our headlines. Russia fires a volley of cruise missiles at cities across Ukraine, including capital Kyiv during Russia on Monday morning. Several civilians killed and power as well as heat knocked out. Russian President Vladimir Putin declares the rocket bombings to be a revenge for Ukrainian attacks, including on the bridge to Crimea. US and EU condemn the attacks. The European Commission condemns Russian missile strikes on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities, describes the attacks as contravention of international humanitarian law. Germany calls for a G7 emergency meeting on Tuesday. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Shankar and his Australian counterpart Penny Wong hold 13th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue. They hold wide-ranging discussions on issues of mutual interest. Also underline the convergence of interest between Quad members on the Indo-Pacific. North Korea says 7 recent missile launches were all tactical nuclear drills personally overseen by leader Kim Jong-un, and that they should serve as a severe warning to the enemies. Japan and the US Indo-Pacific Command condemn North Korea's actions. Malaysia's Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob calls early elections after months of political infighting among politicians in his ruling coalition, announces dissolution of parliament in a televised address. Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen says armed confrontation is absolutely not an option for the two sides. Constructive interaction can only be resumed by respecting Taiwan's sovereignty, democracy and freedom. That's a clear-cut message to China. And former US Fed Chief Ben Bernanke and economists Douglas Diamond and Philip Dybvig bagged the 2022 Nobel Economics Prize, the last of this year's crop of Nobel Awards. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences says on Monday that it's for research on banks and financial crises. And then that brings up the big news. Russia has carried out a blitz of missile strikes on cities across Ukraine, including capital Kyiv, killing at least 10 civilians. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia fired 83 missiles, many of them were shot down. US and Europe have condemned the attacks, but Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned of more action, blaming Ukraine for the Kerch bridge bombing in Crimea.
Russia bombed cities across Ukraine during rush hour on Monday morning in apparent revenge strikes after Russian President Putin declared an explosion on the bridge to Crimea to be a terrorist attack. Missiles tore into Kiev, the most intense strikes on the capital since Russia abandoned an attempt to capture it in the early weeks of the war. Missiles hit houses, university in Mykolaiv. The Russian strike also targeted Zaporizhzhia city. The explosions also hit Shevchenkivsky district. Several explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital Kiev on Monday after Russia accused Ukraine of orchestrating a powerful blast that damaged a key bridge linking Russia and Crimea. Explosions were also reported in Lviv, Ternopil and Zhytomyr in Ukraine's west and Dnipro and Kremenchuk in central Ukraine. Kremlin said that the latest missile strikes on Ukraine were all part of special military operation, while Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Moscow will respond forcefully to Ukrainian attacks.
According to forensic and other experts' data, as well as intelligence information shows that the explosion on October 8 was a terrorist attack. An attack aims to destroy Russia's critical civil infrastructure. It is obvious that Ukrainian secret services ordered, organized and carried out the terrorist attack aimed at destroying Russia's critical civilian infrastructure. But several other terrorist attacks and tries of such attacks have been also made against the energy facilities and gas transporting infrastructure of our country, including the try to blow up parts of gas transporting system Turkish Stream. All of this was proved by unbiased findings, including the testimony of the detained perpetrator of those terrorist attacks.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia timed its strikes on Ukraine on Monday to inflict the greatest possible losses among people and had also targeted the country's energy infrastructure. He also said that Russia was trying to wipe us off the face of the earth.
We believe in ourselves. We restore everything that is destroyed. There may be temporary power outages now, but there will never be an interruption in our confidence in victory. Why exactly such strikes? The enemy wants us to be afraid, to make people run, but we can only run forward, and we demonstrate this on the battlefield. It will continue to be so. Rescuers are working now. Our air defense system is at work.
Russian missiles also hit Ukraine's southern city of Zaporizhia, killing at least one person. An apartment building and a government office in the center of the city were damaged in the attack. Ukraine's Western allies have condemned the attack. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said, deeply shocked by Russia's attacks on civilians in Kiev and other cities in Ukraine, such acts have no place in the 21st century. I condemn them in the strongest possible terms. We stand with Ukraine. Additional military support from the European Union is on its way. The strikes follow the explosion which damaged the only bridge over the Kerch Strait to the Crimean Peninsula, which Putin on Sunday called an act of terrorism aimed at destroying critically important civilian infrastructure. World Today Desk, DD India.
And the European Commission condemned as heinous attacks Russian missile strikes on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities on Monday that killed civilians and damaged civilian infrastructure. The spokesperson for EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell, Peter Stano, said Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko's assertion that Ukraine was planning an attack against his country was totally unfounded, ridiculous accusations.
Indeed, we took note of the false accusations from Lukashenko regime against Ukraine that Ukraine is allegedly planning an attack on the territory of Belarus. These are totally unfounded, ridiculous accusations. They are utterly unacceptable. Ukraine here is the victim, Ukraine is not the aggressor, and we remind the Belarusian regime that Ukraine is under brutal illegal attack which is in violation of the UN Charter and in violation of the international law, and we urge the regime in Minsk to refrain from any involvement of Belarus in this brutal illegitimate undertaking, and we also urge the regime in Minsk to immediately stop allowing the territory of Belarus to serve as a launchpad for airstrikes, including the very recent missile strikes and drone attacks against Ukraine.
G7 leaders and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will hold emergency talks on Tuesday to discuss the latest Russian attacks in Ukraine. A government spokesperson in Berlin told reporters on Monday that Chancellor Olaf Scholz has already spoken by phone with Zelensky and assured him of the solidarity of Germany and the other G7 states.
Bundeskanzler Scholz hat am Vormittag bereits mit dem ukrainischen Präsidenten
On October 11, the G7 countries will discuss the situation during a video conference at 2 p.m. local time. The Ukrainian head of the state, Zelensky, will participate in this call at the beginning.
Deutschland werde alles tun, um zusätzliche Hilfe zu mobilisieren.
Now, following the missile strikes on Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin blamed Ukraine for the attack on the Kerch Bridge in Crimea, calling it terrorism. He warned of harsher action if such attacks continue. But the US has maintained, despite Putin's threats, that it does not feel the need to alter its nuclear posture.
War of words have intensified between Russia and the West in recent days. On Sunday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the explosion on a key bridge linking Crimea and the Russian mainland was a terrorist act planned by the Ukrainian special services, Putin said in a video on the Kremlin's Telegram channel.
There is no doubt that this is an act of terrorism aimed at destroying Russia's critically important civilian infrastructure. And this was devised, carried out and ordered by the Ukrainian special services.
On October 8th, a blast on the strategic road and rail bridge linking Russia and the Crimean Peninsula had brought down sections of road taking traffic in one direction, damaging a crucial supply route for Russian forces in Ukraine. The blast on the Kerch bridge had prompted gleeful messages from Ukrainian officials, but no direct claim of responsibility. Officials said blast had killed 3 people. While on Sunday, huge queues of cars lined up waiting to cross the damaged Crimea bridge as motorists tried to leave the annexed peninsula. The flagship project for Russian President Vladimir Putin was built at a reported cost of $3.6 billion. In recent days, the nuclear rhetoric has also heated up between United States and Russia. Last week, US President Joe Biden had referenced the possibility of nuclear Armageddon, but Kirby said on Sunday that the United States had no indication that Putin had made a decision to use nuclear weapons and that there was no reason to change the US strategic posture. The White House on Sunday said that Biden nuclear warning reflects high stakes in Ukraine war.
The president was reflecting the very high stakes that they're in play right now, Martha, when you have a modern nuclear power and the leader of that modern nuclear power willing to use irresponsible rhetoric the way that Mr. Putin has several times in just the last week or two.
Former United States President Donald Trump has called for an immediate peaceful end to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. While speaking at a Save America rally in the US state of Nevada on Saturday, the former president said that World War III is a possibility because what he said, stupid people don't have a clue about destructive capability of weapons.
And now we have a war between Russia and Ukraine with potentially hundreds of thousands of people dying. We must demand immediate negotiation of a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine, or we will end up in World War III, and there will never be a war like this. We will never have had a war like this, and that's all because of stupid people that don't have a clue, and it's also because of the kind of weaponry that's available today. We never had weapons like this, the destructive capability of weapons, modern weapons. I know more about it than anybody because of the fact that I rebuilt our military.
Recently, the war of words also escalated after leaks in Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in the Swedish and Danish waters. On September 30th, Russian President Vladimir Putin had directly accused the United States and its allies of blowing up the Nord Stream pipelines, while European Union said it suspected sabotage caused the damage to the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in Swedish and Danish waters. The White House has dismissed Russian allegations that it was behind the incidents. On October 7th, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the remarks by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky suggested that NATO should launch preventive strikes on Russia confirmed the need for what it calls its special operation in Ukraine. In a discussion with the Lowy Institute, an Australian think tank, Zelensky had said he believed the strikes were necessary to preclude any use of nuclear weapons. World Today Desk, DD India.
Now, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Monday held broad-ranging discussions with his Australian counterpart Penny Wong in Canberra. The leaders took stock of the steady progress of India and Australia's comprehensive strategic partnership, including important ministerial visits in recent months. Defending the use of Russian arms by Indian forces, the External Affairs Minister on Monday hit out at Western countries for choosing military dictatorships as preferred partners and not supplying India with weapons for decades.
A relationship that has certainly served our interests well, when you asked about the military equipment issue, we have, as you know, a substantial inventory of Soviet and Russian origin weapons, and that inventory actually grew for a variety of reasons. You know, the merits of the weapon systems themselves, but also because for multiple decades Western countries did not supply weapons to India, and in fact saw a military dictatorship next to us as the preferred partner.
The External Affairs Minister also reiterated India's position on the conflict in Ukraine, adding that India has been very clearly against the conflict in Ukraine and believes that it does not serve the interest of anybody, the participants or the international community.
We have been very clearly against the conflict in Ukraine. We believe that this conflict does not serve the interests of anybody, neither the participants nor indeed of the international community. As a country of the global south, we have been seeing firsthand how much it has impacted low-income countries, the challenges that they are facing in terms of fuel and food and fertilizers. My Prime Minister said a few weeks ago at Samarkand that this is not an era of war.
Now, at the joint presser, Australian Foreign Minister stressed that as Indo-Pacific is being reshaped, India and Australia need to navigate together. She added that the Quad is functioning extremely well and its mechanism is primarily focused on the Indo-Pacific.
Quad is functioning extremely well. I think that the level of strategic trust and strategic consistency amongst Quad partners is deep and firm. As I said, I note Prime Minister Modi's public comments and we've welcomed them.
So from Canberra to, if you track back a little, in September in New York, the External Affairs Minister has been doing a lot of plain speaking on world affairs, especially how India interacts with the world, its relations with different countries, and that is, of course, striking a very forthright note as well. To talk about this, we have with us Dr. Ashok Sharma, Academic Fellow, Australia India Institute, University of Melbourne, Australia. Good evening to you, Dr. Sharma. What do you make of this sort of candid speak, this plain speak by the External Affairs Minister to put across India's foreign policy in the kind of perspective that is, some would say, refreshing, some might say disruptive? What is your take on it?
I think India is putting its stand, and Foreign Minister is right in saying that, look, what, especially at, the Western countries are pointing that why India is taking a stand on Russia and why it's abstaining, and this came again. It keeps coming. So I think Foreign Minister has very well put that India was ignored, and throughout the Cold War period, we were, India was not given the kind of equipment, military equipment and hardware was required, and in the next door, Pakistan was given all sorts of this, and a country which was, ruled by military dictatorship, is rightly put things, and this has been an issue in Australia also, and journalists and strategic communities have been, they have been raising this point whenever this Australia-India relationship talk is coming during this Russia-Ukraine conflict. And if you look at this, that this has not affected Australia-India relationship trajectory. The way it has been developing is an extraordinary development. This kind of thing you can only relate during, the Bush administration and Vajpayee government, when they started doing it in the wake of, the war on terrorism, and the way in the first, 4 or 5 years, and then Manmohan Singh, they developed. So during COVID, this relationship has accelerated, and we have seen it, that how it has from, strategic partnership to it has been elevated to comprehensive strategic partnership. Australia acknowledges India's stand, India's strategic and economic importance, and a strategic balancer in the emerging strategic challenges, which is obviously the assertive position of China in the Indo-Pacific region, which is a concern for both countries, concern for the like-minded democratic countries. America, India, Australia, Japan, they all are coming together. Quad is coming. So I think India has put this point very well, and current government, Prime Minister Modi and S. Jaishankar, our defense minister, they all have been putting these points very well.
And do you feel this also reflects the larger feeling, especially in the community that watches world affairs in India and for India, even abroad, that what is happening in Ukraine is also a consequence of this Cold War mindset. The Cold War ended, but the mindset seems to persist.
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's a Western created problem. It's not India's problem. So why should India suffer? India has to look into this, its strategic interest. India has to look at its security interest. So India is right in saying, and India is not supporting the war. India has been very much from the day one. It has asked for the peaceful negotiation of the war. And in fact, Prime Minister Modi has recently met Putin, and he has said that this is not the time of war. And it has been acknowledged by Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong that Prime Minister Modi has clearly stated, and when journalists were asking this question in the press conference, so this was reiterated by. So I think the Western countries are understanding this, India's stand, India's point, and that's what I would say. That and India has been able to diplomatically, convey its message throughout its like-minded democratic countries, the strategic partners, or whatever. So and it's not the time for war, and India has rightly said from the beginning, and it has supported Ukraine in terms of all kind of aid, medical aid, and everything. So India has taken a very right decision, and it's a strategic interest, and it's just if we continue to pursue this Cold War mentality, which I think the US and NATO and all these European countries should understand that you have to talk. You have to, discuss these issues, and this is not the time for war, and it's not the time for also, this kind of continuous.
Let's talk about the US as well. Let's talk about the US as well. Our relationship with the US has been good. We have been enhancing our partnerships, and there's a lot of convergence as far as perspective on world issues is concerned, except for recent issues that India has also pointed out, such as the F-16 package that has been given to Pakistan by the US, and the External Affairs Minister called out the reason officially given by the US, as well as you can't fool people by saying those sort of things. The other is that of visas as well.
Yeah. Look, India-US relations, if you are talking about this, I would say it has gone beyond a level, beyond an imagine. You can't imagine the way it has gone deep and deep. Before Cold War, we were doing just, one or two platforms. They were, and after Cold War, it is now 50, 60, 70 platforms we are doing. It's a deepening relationship. Is the defining partnership of the 21st century. These small things will keep coming. When they started making this relationship during the beginning of the 21st century, especially Vajpayee and Bush, when they started, they saw India-US as a natural allies, and it was supposed to be independent of Indo-Russian and US-Pakistan relationship. But sometimes it keeps coming. India is buying S-400, that surface-to-air missile, and Pakistan, US giving aid to Pakistan. So there are still people who are in the US Congress who supports Pakistan, who tries to maintain a balance between India and Pakistan by giving some kind of these things. But I think Indian lobbying is very strong, and it has been a kind of the way it has changed the perception in the US Congress. You can see that this they have played an important role, and so I see this will keep coming. India-Russia concern, India-Russia relation, and US-Pakistan, US aid to Pakistan. They keep on saying that Pakistan is a hub of terrorism. There are a lot of lawmakers have been making this issue, but it continues to be a kind of issue. But I don't think it's affecting India-US relationship. It is beyond these concerns. It is very much ingrained in the values of democracy and the kind of complementary nature of the economies and the diaspora. It's just beyond that, and above all, it's the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific, where the aggressive China is asserting its hegemonic.
Interesting you mentioned China, because China was trying to give the impression to the world recently that things are improving between India and China, because there has been some sort of a rollback in terms of the positions in just one spot in eastern Ladakh, while others remain. And the External Affairs Minister was again very clear that till complete status quo ante is restored, we can't really have normal, business as usual kind of ties.
Yeah, look, India-China relationship, we have seen that it will continue to be there. Both are competing for the more or less same space. China is a bit ahead, but India is also catching up. So they will have this kind of relations, and they will engage, they will try to contain each other. China is already, encircling India through a string of pearls and all kind of making bases and ports in India's vicinity, in India's backyard. And India is also trying to, balance China through its necklace of diamond. That is like, making friendship and strategic partner, defense ties, security ties with China, various countries in the East Asia, in the Indo-Pacific. So this will continue. India-China is competing. Relationship is very competitive, conflictive, and they will cooperate on certain issues also, like renewable energy or environmental issues or some issues. They will continue to cooperate. Even India abstained on the human rights issue recently at the UN in support of it. In fact, it supported China. So they are of thinking that you cannot, pinpoint a country by saying that it is a human rights violation. So that is also, and that shows India is, siding with China kind of things. If you look at this, that you can't non-interference. So I would say that India-China relationship will continue to be very, very competitive, and it's a very much India has to be aware that they can't be complicit at the India-China border. China is doing all sorts of to encircle India. So whatever we can do, minimize the tension. That's okay. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. So India has to watch its flanks and at the same time pursue the interest of its people at all forums, and that is what I think this government and our external affairs minister is doing, and he's not being apologetic about it, not being evasive about it, not trying to say one thing and do another, and that is very, very clear to see. And thank you so much for joining us to talk about it, Professor Shah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, now North Korea has said that the recent flurry of missile test launches have been personally supervised by its leader Kim Jong-un to simulate striking its southern neighbor with tactical nuclear weapons. The launches were carried out in response to large-scale Navy drills by South Korea and the US's forces in the region in recent 2 weeks, ratcheting tension up even further.
North Korea's KCNA state news agency said the North Korean leader had guided recent exercises by nuclear tactical operation units in response to large-scale Navy drills by South Korean and US forces, which have escalated regional tensions. North Korea on Monday also released photographs of leader Kim Jong-un observing a missile launch. North Korea's KCNA state news agency said the North Korean leader had guided recent exercises by nuclear tactical operation units in response to large-scale Navy drills by South Korean and US forces, which have escalated regional tensions. Over the past 2 weeks, North Korea carried out exercises involving ballistic missiles with mocked nuclear warheads, KCNA reported, saying it was to deliver a strong message of war deterrence. They were conducted to target enemy airfields and key ports, it added. KCNA said North Korea's ruling Workers' Party decided to conduct the drills as an unavoidable response to a large-scale mobilization of US and South Korean naval forces, including an aircraft carrier and a nuclear-powered submarine. The launch was the 7th in recent days, adding to widespread alarm in Washington and its allies in Tokyo and Seoul. Japan's defense ministry officials strongly condemned North Korea's firing of 2 ballistic missiles on Sunday, saying Tokyo would not tolerate the repeated actions by North Korea.
Since the end of September, in this short period of time, they have launched missiles 7 times, escalating its direct provocative actions. These actions by North Korea are a threat to the peace and security of our country, region, and the international community, and it absolutely cannot be tolerated.
After the North Korean statement on Monday, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's office said, "It is important to accurately recognize the severity of security issues in the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia to prepare properly." While North Korea's neighbor and ally China pointed to joint military exercises held by the United States and its allies around the Korean Peninsula when asked about Sunday's launches. China's foreign ministry said on Sunday the United States should create conditions to resume dialogue with North Korea.
中方注意到了有关的报道， We hope all sides can uphold the pursuit of a political solution to the issue of the Korean Peninsula, resolve in a balanced way each other's concerns through dialogue and consultation.
通过对话协商，均衡解决彼此关切。
Recently, United States and South Korea held joint maritime exercises involving a US aircraft carrier a day after the South scrambled fighter jets in reaction to an apparent North Korean aerial bombing drill. The Navy exercises involved the US carrier Ronald Reagan and its strike crew. The naval forces of South Korea, Japan and the United States also conducted joint drills before that. The US-led UN forces are still technically at war with North Korea as the 1950-1953 Korean War ended in an armistice rather than a peace treaty. North Korea has launched about 40 missiles this year, including its largest intercontinental ballistic missiles, and appears ready to hold its first nuclear test since 2017, officials in Seoul and Washington have said. World Today Desk, DD India.
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has said on Monday that war between Taiwan and China is absolutely not an option, as she reiterated her willingness to talk to Beijing and also pledged to boost the island's defences, including with precision missiles. Tsai, in her National Day speech outside the presidential office, said it was regrettable that China had escalated its intimidation and threatened peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and region. She said that China should not think there is room for compromise in the commitment of Taiwan's people to democracy and freedom.
我要呼吁北京当局兵戎相见。
I want to make clear to the Beijing authorities that armed confrontation is absolutely not an option for our two sides. Only by respecting the commitment of the Taiwanese people to our sovereignty, democracy and freedom can there be a foundation for resuming constructive interaction across the Taiwan Strait.
的最大的共识就是捍卫主权以及我们民主自由的生活方。
The problem is China does not want Taiwan to remain sovereign or free. Now, Malaysian Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob called for an early election on Monday, hoping to win a stronger mandate for his party and stabilize the rocky political landscape that has plagued the country over the last 4 years. In a televised speech, Ismail said the country's monarch had agreed to his request to dissolve parliament on Monday and an election date would be announced by the Election Commission. Ismail said he was calling for the elections to end questions over the legitimacy of his government and return the mandate to the people.
The Majesty acted according to his discretion by consenting to my request that the 14th Parliament be dissolved today. With this announcement, the mandate will be returned to the people. The people's mandate is a powerful antidote for the country to manifest political stability and create a strong, stable and respected government after the 15th general election.
Austrian President Alexander Van der Bellen on Sunday secured a second 6-year term in office by winning a clear majority of votes and avoiding a runoff, according to projections based on almost all votes cast except postal ballots. The far-right Freedom Party was the only one in Parliament to field a candidate against Van der Bellen, who won a much tighter race against a Freedom Party opponent in 2016. The Austrian president has a largely ceremonial role, but the office holder also has sweeping powers during periods of overseeing transition and turbulence. The president is the commander-in-chief of the army and can sack the whole government or the chancellor. Van der Bellen, who is 78 years old, has the explicit or implicit backing of Austria's major parties except for the Freedom Party. About 6.4 million people were eligible to vote out of a population of 9 million. The votes counted on Sunday did not include postal ballots, which will be tallied on Monday, but projections are for the result as a whole. Those projections have proved highly reliable in the past. Now, on day 2 of the Gujarat visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi dedicated to the nation and laid the foundation stones of projects worth over 8,000 crore rupees in Amod, Bharuch. The Prime Minister dedicated several projects which will give a boost to the chemical sector. He dedicated 800 TPD caustic soda plant integrated with 130 megawatts of cogeneration power plant at Dahej. Along with this, he also dedicated the expansion of existing caustic soda plant at Dahej, the capacity of which has been increased from 785 metric tons a day to 1310 metric tons a day. The PM also dedicated to the nation a project for manufacturing over 1 lakh metric tons per annum of chloromethanes at Dahej. Other projects which were dedicated to the nation by the PM include the hydrazine hydrate plant at Dahej, which will help in import substitution of the product, IOCL Dahej Koyali pipeline project, Bharuch underground drainage and STP work, and widening and strengthening of Umla Asa Panetha road. The PM also laid the foundation stone of bulk drug park at Jambusar.
रोड का काम भी बहुत तेजी से पूरा हो जाएगा.
The PM also inaugurated phase 1 of Modi Shaikshanik Sankul. The first phase included completion of 12-storied hostel with over 116 rooms which can accommodate over 400 students. The project will provide facilities to students for holistic development. The PM underlined that societies that focus on education and skill development will succeed, and thus constant focus should be made on making education more accessible to the youth. And now it's time to get you all the updates from the world of business and economy. And for all the updates from the business and economy world, we have Tanvi with us. Go ahead, Tanvi.
Thank you, Gautam. Up first in business today, the 2022 Nobel Prize for Economic Sciences was awarded to 3 US-based economists on Monday on how propping up failing banks can stave off an even deeper economic crisis. Former Federal Reserve Chief Ben Bernanke, Douglas Diamond and Philip Dybvig won for research on banks and financial crises. The trio started their work in the early 1980s and carried practical importance in regulating financial markets and dealing with financial crises. The Academy said that Bernanke showed with statistical analysis that bank runs led to bank failures, and this was the mechanism that turned a relatively ordinary recession into the depression in the 1930s, the world's most dramatic and severe crisis. Bank runs can easily become self-fulfilling, leading to the collapse of an institution and putting the entire financial sector at risk. Governments around the world bailed out banks in 2008 and 2009 as well, generating a torrent of criticism as ordinary consumers suffered, with many losing their homes, even as banks, a key culprit of the crisis, were saved. The trio joined such luminaries as Paul Krugman and Milton Friedman, previous winners of the Nobel Prize for Economics. Further, the Bank of England said on Monday that it would launch a temporary expanded collateral repo facility. It will help banks to ease liquidity pressures facing their client funds caught up in the recent market turmoil which threatened pension funds. The bank further added that the liquidity insurance operations will run beyond the end of this week. Further, the Bank of England also sought to ease concerns about this week's expiry of its program to calm turmoil in the government bond market, announcing on Monday new safety net measures, including a doubling of the maximum size of its debt buybacks. In stock market news now, stock markets in Asia slipped on Monday after a surprise drop in US unemployment quashed any thought of a pivot on policy tightening ahead of a reading on inflation, which is expected to see core prices move higher again. Geopolitical tensions added to the uncertainty as markets waited to see how the Kremlin might respond to the blast that hit Russia's only bridge to Crimea. Holidays in Japan and South Korea made for thin trading in Asia, while the treasury market is also shut on Monday. So Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index declined nearly 3% and China's Shanghai Composite Index lost 1.7% on Monday. Back home, the domestic stock markets extended their losing streak for the second straight day. The 30-share Sensex at the BSE fell 200 points or 0.3% to end at 57,991. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange lost 74 points or 0.4% to close at 17,241. In the broader market, BSE mid-cap and small-cap indices fell 0.5% each. Except information technology, all other sectoral indices ended lower, with PSU, Bank, Realty, FMCG, capital goods and power indices down 1% each. And the key European markets were choppy on Monday as volatility continued amid concerns over economic growth and monetary policy tightening from central banks. So London's FTSE 100 was down 0.3% last. France's CAC 40 had lost 0.1%, but Germany's DAX had advanced 0.7% on Monday in Frankfurt. Concerns over economic growth in the face of tightening monetary policy and the war in Ukraine continued to dampen investor sentiment. Shifting focus again to Asia as Japan throws open its doors to visitors this week after more than 2 years of pandemic isolation. Hopes for a tourism boom face tough headwinds amid shuttered shops and a shortage of hospitality workers there. From Tuesday, Japan will reinstate visa-free travel to dozens of countries, ending some of world's strictest border controls to slow the spread of COVID-19. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is counting on tourism to help invigorate the economy and reap some benefits from the yen's slide to a 24-year low. However, Japan might not exactly be how foreign tourists remember it. While most countries around the world have dialed back their coronavirus restrictions, mask wearing, while not obligatory, remains the norm in Japan, raising fears of a cultural clash once foreign visitors return en masse. And very quickly, let's tell you how the global crude oil prices did today. They fell on Monday, ending 5 straight days of gains as investors looked to slowing economic activity in China, the world's biggest crude importer, which revived concerns about a global recession and falling global fuel demand. So Brent crude fell by as much as 1.1% and was last down 86 cents at $97.06 a barrel. US crude declined by as much as 1.1% again and was down 70 cents at $91.94 a barrel. Now, the strikes that have hit French oil refineries and storage sites are continuing on Monday. CGT trade union representatives at Total Energies and ExxonMobil's Esso France told Reuters on Monday. The strikes have added to pressure on President Emmanuel Macron's government, which is already facing public discontent over inflation and higher household bills. This comes a day after the French company had offered to bring forward wage talks in an effort to end the labour dispute, which has been dragging on for around 2 weeks now. So that's it from the world of business. Let's go back to Gautam for other news coming in. Gautam, back to you.
Let's now get you some more international news. A Spanish Coast Guard vessel transported 23 migrants found in the Atlantic Ocean to the port of Arguineguín in the island of Gran Canaria on Monday, the Red Cross said. The migrants, all African men, were rescued as they travelled in a dinghy 40 miles south of the island. That's what the Coast Guard said as well. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, in a televised address on Sunday, said that at least 22 people died and 52 were missing after 5 small rivers in central Venezuela flooded due to heavy rains. The downpour on Saturday night swept large tree trunks and debris from surrounding mountains into the community of the Herias, 40 miles southwest of Caracas, damaging businesses and farmland. In the U.S., 2 people were shot outside the home of New York Congressman and Republican New York gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin, who's made addressing crime and violence a key point in his campaign. According to a statement issued by Zeldin, the shooting appeared to have no connection to the Zeldin family. Zeldin said he did not know the identities of the 2 individuals who were shot, but said they had been laying down under his front porch and the bushes in front of it as well. And with that, it's time to look at some of the stories who don't make it to the headlines but still have an impact in Beyond Headlines.
Berlin's Brandenburg Gate was among the monuments and buildings illuminated as part of the city's annual Festival of Lights, which started Friday. The festival has reduced the amount of illuminated venues from 60 to 35 compared to last year. According to the organizers, the festival will also use 75% less electricity. Germany has enacted various energy-saving measures to combat potential energy shortages in the upcoming winter, including banning the illuminating of public buildings. The festival's theme was Vision of Our Future, and the event runs until October 16th. Thousands of flowers in brilliant hues of pink, purple, blue, orange and yellow greeted visitors at Manhattan's Hudson Yards in New York City for the Fleurs de Villes Femmes Floral Show. 16 mannequins standing over 10 feet tall are covered in hydrangeas, baby's breath, violets and more. The free flower show runs through October 16. A British artist has taken home decoration to a new level by drawing doodle art over his entire home in Kent, southern England. From the outside walls to the kitchen sink, Sam Cox, known as Doodle, has covered every inch of his home in depictions of figures and symbols. Cox spent 2 years decorating the 12-room house and took several years to plan, according to a post on the artist's Instagram page. Videos of Mr. Doodle's works have received millions of views across his social media platforms. Tunisian tattoo artist Manel Mahdouni is reviving traditional Berber designs that had long been considered unfashionable but are now gaining popularity among the new generation. Among Tunisians, Berber languages were seen as a symbol of an impoverished past, but some younger people are now becoming interested in their Berber roots and turning to Mahdouni to connect them to it with tattoos. World Today Desk, DD India.
And now we're turning to the world of sports. And to get you all the updates from different sporting arenas, we have Deepika with us. Go ahead, Deepika.
Thanks and good evening, Gautam. Now let's quickly take a look at all that is buzzing in the world of sports. To start with cricket, in Asia Cup encounter, India beat Thailand by 9 wickets as it was a collective show from the Indian spinners. Snehi Rana claimed 3 wickets while Deepti Sharma and Rajeshwari Gaikwad claimed 2 each as Thailand were bundled out for just 37. Nanapat was the only batter from Thailand who managed to hit a double-digit score of 12. Well, India did not find much difficulty to chase down the target. However, it was a disappointment for Shafali Verma, who failed to remain unbeaten in the chase and was dismissed for 8, while Sivaneni Meghana and Pooja Vastrukar collected 18 runs off the 6th over to get the job early. And now in football, in yet another record-breaking performance, Cristiano Ronaldo came off the bench to score his 700th club goal as Manchester United came from behind to win 2-1 against Everton at Goodison Park. Well, Ronaldo's 700 goals have come in 944 games for Sporting Lisbon, Manchester United, Real Madrid and Juventus. Ronaldo has been struggling in front of goal this season, missing plenty of chances. And despite playing well in many games, the 37-year-old has nothing to show for at the end. After coming on for Anthony Martial in the first half, Ronaldo rolled back the years with a fantastic performance. And moving on, ahead of India's crucial encounter at FIFA Under-17 tournament, Union Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur has nominated Law Minister Kiren Rijiju, athlete Neeraj Chopra and actor Ajay Devgan to join the Kick Off the Dream campaign to show support for Indian female footballers participating in FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup for the first time. In a tweet, the sports minister said, and I quote, "I nominate Kiren Rijiju ji, Neeraj Chopra, Ajay Devgan to join the Kick Off the Dream campaign and show support for a female footballers participating in FIFA Under-17 World Cup for the first time. Let every Indian join in and cheer for our girls." Unquote. And to this, Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju tweeted, and I quote, "Thank you Anurag Thakurji for the support to Indian women's team for the FIFA Under-17 World Cup. I nominate N. Biren Singh Ji, CM of Manipur, and ex-footballer, Olympic medalist PV Sindhu and superfit Akshay Kumar to join the campaign, kick off the dream and support our female footballers." And Bollywood star Akshay Kumar took the baton ahead. He wrote in a tweet, and I'll quote him here, "Thank you Kiren Rijiju ji. I'm already so proud of our female footballers team. You got this. I nominate my friends Tiger Shroff and Shikhar Dhawan to join Kick Off the Dream campaign and show support for our female footballers participating for the very first time in FIFA Under-17 Football World Cup." Well, India will make its FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup debut on the 11th of October, and star footballer Bala Devi has urged all the fans to attend and support the women's team. Take a listen.
Bala Devi, welcome to DD India, and the FIFA Under-17 World Cup is about to start. So, how much important this event for India?
Very important for us, women's. अभी Under-17 World Cup इंडिया में होस्ट हो रहा है, तो हमारा जितना भी हमारा जो जनरेशन के लिए और आगे जाने के लिए बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है ये हमारा इंडिया में होस्ट करना, और फेडरेशन ने हमारे लिए वुमेन के लिए हमारे इंडिया में होस्ट हो रहा है, तो ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। और मैं उम्मीद करती हूँ कि जितना भी अभी Under-17 वर्ल्ड कप प्लेयर जो स्क्वाड में जो भी है हमारा देश के लिए रोशन करेंगे और अच्छा खेलेंगे उन लोग।
Last time we saw when the boys Under-17 World Cup was hosted in India, we saw several stars were there, like internationally also, domestically it gave number of stars. So do you think this time also this tournament will give a number of stars to India?
Yes, obviously हमने देखा कि Under-17 World Cup जब इंडिया में हो रहा था इतना सपोर्ट नहीं था पहले। Under-17 वर्ल्ड कप इंडिया में होने के बाद जितना भी स्टेट में है सब फुटबॉल में तारीफ कर रहे हैं और फैंस एवरी मैच देखने के लिए आ रहे हैं, तो ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। मैं उम्मीद करती हूँ कि Under-17 वर्ल्ड कप अभी जो खेलने वाले हैं वो लोग हमारे Under-17 प्लेयर को तारीफ करेंगे और उनको चीयर अप करने के लिए जरूर आएंगे।
Talking about football, a new dawn has been started for Indian football. PM Modi especially is taking keen interest in football. Last time also he was very vocal about hosting the big football events in India. So do you think that in coming times and with the kind of support it's given by the government of India, Indian football will be at the next level?
Yes, मैं कहना चाहती हूँ कि बहुत अच्छा इंडिया में हो रहा है, हर चीज़ एवरी डिसिप्लिन हर प्लेयर को अच्छा खेल रहा है और मोटिवेशन दे रहा है। अभी ओलंपिक में खेल चुका है, अभी कॉमनवेल्थ गेम में खेल के आया है, इंडिया को रोशन कर रहे हैं, और नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने बहुत अच्छा हमारे लिए प्लेयर के लिए खेलो इंडिया भी बना हुआ है, तो ये प्लेयर के लिए बहुत मोटिवेशन और आगे बढ़ने के लिए सही रास्ता किया है।
Bala is saying that these government initiatives like Khelo India and many other schemes and hosting of big football events in India shows that Indian football is in the right direction, and in the future also Indian football will take to new heights and they will take new steps to dominate in the football arena. With camera person Sandeep Narayan Singh, DD India, Ahmedabad.
And with that, it's a wrap in Sports Today. Back to you.
Thank you, Deepika. And now it's time to turn the pages of history to find out what made headlines on this very day.
On this day in 1911, Chinese nationalist leader Sun Yat-sen proclaimed a republic at Wuchang and began the revolution that overthrew the Manchu dynasty. On this day in 1954, North Vietnamese communist leader Ho Chi Minh entered Hanoi after French troops pulled out of the city following armistice terms. On this day in 2000, former Sri Lankan Prime Minister Sirimavo Bandaranaike, the world's first woman premier, died aged 84. On this day in the year 2005, Milton Obote, Uganda's first post-independence leader died in exile in South Africa, aged 80. On this day in 2010, International Mascot Parade in Germany attempted to break the world record. World Today Desk, DD India.
And with that history lesson, that's all we have time for the moment in this edition of World Today. For all the latest, stay with DD India.